whether you're in fight versus flight is really not as important as just connecting with yourself and understanding where's your energy, even if you lump them together, is just excess energy.
You're listening to Overwhelmed Working Woman, the podcast that helps you be more calm and more productive by doing less. I'm your host, Michelle Gauthier, a former overwhelmed working woman and current life coach. On this show, we unpack the stress and pressure that today's working woman experiences. And in each episode, you'll get a strategy to bring more calm, ease, and relaxation to your life. Hello, friend. Thank you for joining today. I have a great guest for you. Life coach Lauren Rapaport is going to explain how your nervous system reacts in times of stress and overwhelm. She'll help you understand your body's responses to stress and how sometimes our body feels like a tiger is chasing us when really we just have been in our boss's office and she was upset with us. She's going to teach us how to get awareness of when we're in the biological responses to stress. You might have heard of fight or flight. Those are two biological responses to stress. She's going to tell us about 4 of those. She's going to tell us how to regulate your nervous system with simple yet super effective techniques. And then she's lastly going to teach you how to foster a sense of safety and calm in your body so that you can reduce stress. And when you can reduce stress, you can think clearly. So you are in for a treat. Thanks for joining, and let's welcome Lauren. Welcome, Lauren. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. I'm super excited for you to educate all of us about the nervous system today.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
Yes, you're a pro on here. This is your 3rd time that you've been on this podcast, most frequent guest. We love having you.
Oh my gosh, I feel so honored.
Okay, so I think the nervous system is a word that we hear a lot, or maybe it's just because you and I are coaches and we're always, following people who are talking about the nervous system. But I have to say, I don't really know what it means. So could you start just by telling us, what is it?
Yes. Well, the nervous system is a very broad term that has a lot of functions and meanings. So what I mean in the context of, feeling safe and overwhelmed is the autonomic nervous system.
Okay.
Which is, think of it like your body's command center, which is responsible for automatic functions like breathing, heart rate, your body's survival responses like fight, flight, freeze, fawn, which is what we're going to be talking about today.
Okay. So when we hear just in general terms, usually when people say the nervous system, that's probably what they're talking about is that automatic system. Okay.
Yes. So in our world, when you hear the nervous system, your nervous system is dysregulated, they're talking about the autonomic nervous system.
Okay. Perfect. And so when our nervous system works and does what it should to keep us safe, can you just give me an example of when our nervous system really serves us?
Absolutely. I just want to take a step back for a second. And when I'm talking about the survival response, what I mean by that is, first of all, our brain has one function, and that is to keep us alive. We are programmed for survival. So when your brain detects a threat, and what I mean by that, it could be a real threat or a perceived threat. So a real threat is like a tiger is chasing you down the street, or you're about to get into a car accident, or a perceived threat is like, I'm sitting here on this podcast, my heart's beating a little fast, I'm feeling a little nervous, or you're giving a presentation in front of lots of people. That's a perceived threat. So the brain doesn't know the difference between a real threat or a perceived threat.
Okay.
So in the brain, it's always scanning the environment for a threat, real threat, perceived threat. So when the brain detects you're in danger, it sends a signal to your nervous system, the autonomic nervous system, and sends you into survival mode. So fight, flight, freeze, fawn. And then when you go into survival mode, critical resources become unavailable, like your ability to think clearly or make critical decisions or things like that.
That makes so much sense. And I think what I'm hearing you say, and I'm thinking of an exact example that happened in my house yesterday morning, but when your brain goes into that survival mode, no matter what has caused it, we just lose the ability to think clearly. And it seems like what you're saying is our body focuses in on just the essentials. So it makes our heart beat really fast so we can react. It makes us breathe faster so that we can like keep ourselves safe, but we're not going to be like doing a lot of thinking at that point.
Exactly. You're not going to be solving any math problems when you're in survival.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yesterday, this is just a random example, but as you're talking about it, I thought that's what happened yesterday. My daughter, she leaves for the bus. The bus comes at 7:41. She likes to walk out the door at about 7:40 and 45 seconds. Like she leaves herself seconds to get to the bus. And like 1 minute before she had to leave, she realized she didn't know where her backpack was. And we had company for the weekend, so we'd probably put it away somewhere. And she started being like, I can't find my backpack. I don't know where my backpack is. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, you don't know where your backpack is. I said, okay, where do you think it could be? I mean, she couldn't think of anything. It was like she just freaked out. I think her brain projected right ahead to she was going to miss the bus. And then I was going to be mad at her and have to take her to school, et cetera. And she literally couldn't find her backpack.
Yeah. So she outsourced her decision to you, who had a calm brain. And you were probably like, it's right there.
Yes, exactly. It was just such a funny thing that happened because she was completely calm. And then when she realized she couldn't find it, it was like, I mean, she was even breathing hard and everything. So that's just such a good example of exactly what you said of the perceived threat that from the outside, I didn't see as a threat, but her body definitely took it as a threat.
That is a great example. And back to your original question, which was what's an example of when it's working for us? Because these states are designed to protect us. These are survival mode. Back to, we are programmed for survival. So an example of when we go into survival mode to protect us. So if you are, let's say, driving down the highway and you see in your rear view mirror, a car swerves into your lane and you swerve to miss it. And to your point earlier, you feel your heart racing, you feel a surge of adrenaline, you feel that panic, and you are now in fight or flight. And you have swerved to miss that car and you've avoided an accident. So it is like you are in survival, but you've like avoided the threat, but you can feel that your heart racing.
Okay, that makes sense. And so it enabled me to just make that one quick move, but I'm not going to be doing any critical thinking. And then, yeah, when that happens, I always feel like sweaty hands and my heart's beating fast for a while after. Like you giving me that example, I think I need to pull over after that and like take some deep breaths.
Exactly. But then after a little while, you'll feel yourself returning back to a calm state. Your breathing returns. And like if you take some deep breaths afterwards, that will help facilitate that returning to calm state. You can maybe even call like a loved one, like somebody who you know is going to calm you down and bring you back to a calm state.
Okay. Okay. That makes sense. And so when we're talking about this in terms of life coaching and the things that you and I do, so just so the audience knows, Lauren is a life coach too, and she helps people who have type 1 diabetes. And I know from you teaching me this, Lauren, that a lot of times when you have type 1, which Lauren also does, that your body goes into one of those states when it's not a true emergency, like an almost car accident. So tell us what the difference is between, you always hear fight or flight, but I've heard you talk about fawn and what's the fourth one?
Fight, flight, freeze, fawn.
So will you just tell us what those are? It sounds like they're all survival states, but what's the difference between those?
Yes. Okay. I'll go into all four of those. A couple of things I want to state before I go into all four is that it's all about safety and feeling safe. And so the way you perceive the world is really how you feel. So if you see the world as dangerous, you're going to feel bad and you're going to feel stressed and you're going to feel overwhelmed. And if you perceive the world as safe and connected, you're going to feel calm and you're going to feel better and you're going to feel good. So in that example of the driving, so if you're just like driving down the highway of life and you're chronically stressed and overwhelmed and you have lots of things going on where you're stressed a lot, you're going to start to see lots of cars cutting you off. So you start to lose that perception, what's real, a real danger versus a perceived danger. So if you have a demanding boss and you have a child that has a project and you have a husband that's demanding lots of you, it's going to feel like a car is swerving at you all the time.
I see. Okay.
So you start to live in fight or flight.
Okay, I see. That makes so much sense. So if you have a disease that doesn't go away, like type 1, it's possible for your body and your brain to feel like the world is dangerous and that you're kind of almost constantly in fight or flight or often in it.
Yeah. So either you're living in fight or flight, and that's where the awareness is so much power in awareness. And so you can start to recognize when you're in fight or flight, and you can bring yourself out of fight or flight and back into safety. So you're either living in fight or flight, or like Josie, the example of Josie, you go into it really easily.
Yeah.
So she perceived the danger of missing her bus. So it's like that hypervigilance of you're kind of on the edge of fight or flight.
Yes. And this makes so much sense, I think, because obviously the audience that we're talking to today, maybe there are some people out there who have type 1, but it's not going to be everybody. But I think everybody who's listening is feeling overwhelmed or does often feel overwhelmed. And it feels like when you live in that high stress world of always when I was there, it was like everything I was doing was kind of by the seat of my pants. I always had 2 seconds before I had the next thing going on. It was just kind of constant stress on top of stress. And so that could be another situation where you're just a hair trigger away from being in fight or flight at all times.
Yes, that's exactly right. Exactly right. So to go into all four, fight is what it sounds like, where you're ready to fight the threat. So it's marked with rage, irritation, anger, frustration. So if a boss is hypercritical, you react from your emotion. You may snap at your boss and react in a way you may not have likely wanted to. And afterwards, you may regret snapping. And you would have maybe liked to have paused, enacted the Michelle pause.
Yes. But you missed it. It's too late for that. You already told them to go screw off or whatever you said.
Exactly. Flight is just what it sounds like. You're fleeing the threat. So it's a little bit more obvious when it's like you're confronted by a bear in the woods and you flee the threat. But when we're talking overwhelm, this one's a little harder to wrap your brain around. So the way I like to say, it's like putting a barrier or a buffer between you and what you're anxious about. So, for example, it's like an avoidance. So if you're scared of your feelings, it's putting a buffer between you and your feelings, whether it's overeating, over drinking, overworking. It's anything. So that's why flight, it's kind of hard if you think of it flight wise, it's a little bit hard to wrap your brain around. So think of it like avoidance, a buffer, a wall between you and what you're avoiding.
Yes, I like that. It makes more sense to call it avoid, but that doesn't fit in with all the F's, does it? But I agree with you. That makes a lot more sense. Yes. Okay, great. That makes sense. And I feel like depending on the client, everyone who I work with has some version of avoidance.
Yeah, this is my default. This is 100% my default is flight. And then freeze is, again, it's what it sounds like. It's the immobilized freeze state. So think deer in headlights. So if, I can't tell you how many times I've raised my hand on a call, gotten really nervous and frozen, no words come out. Or the isolation tactic. A lot of my clients with type 1 are really struggling with their emotions. So instead of talking to somebody, they isolate.
Do you wake up already feeling exhausted by the day ahead? Do you find yourself always in a rush and losing patience with your kids and your spouse? If you constantly put everyone else before you, if you say yes to everything, if you're constantly stressed out because you never get to the bottom of your to-do list, you are stuck in the cycle of overwhelm. You might have tried getting more organized or even working longer hours, but it doesn't permanently solve that stressed and overwhelmed feeling. What if there was a solution that actually worked? I'm opening up coaching spots. I have 2 available to work with me personally in a one-on-one situation where I will teach you and walk through every tool with you that you need to know to really overcome overwhelm and achieve more by doing less. In this program, you will learn how to feel calm and just move through life, both work and home, with ease. You'll learn how to say no and put yourself first and start choosing what's best for you, maybe for the first time ever. So take the first step towards a calmer, more intentional life by scheduling your free consultation today. Click in the link in the show notes to reserve your spot before they fill up. Like I said, I have 2 spots open. Don't miss out on this opportunity to transform your life. Also, this is the last month to purchase one-on-one coaching at the current rates. Prices are going up 25% in June. So take us through, I feel like that's such a relatable one, the one where you said you're on this call, you have a question, you raise your hand, you obviously know what the question is, and then you get called on. And then what happens? Will you just walk us through it one more time so we can understand exactly what happens then?
So for me, I've raised my hand on a call where there's over 100 people on the Zoom. I remember seeing the faces on the Zoom as the threat. I feel my heart is racing. I'm so nervous. And I go to talk and then I just freeze.
And you just have no words.
No words.
The question is completely gone from your head because
Yes.
your brain has said, we're in danger. We can't think about what we were going to ask. We just have to stay safe.
Yes. And then my critical thinking is just offline.
Yep. I feel like this is so common, especially at the beginning of a presentation or anytime you're doing something where you feel uncomfortable. I feel like it can easily get into that where the words are just gone for a minute. Okay, that's a great example. Thank you.
Another example here is, you hear about sexual assault victims who don't fight back. They're in complete freeze.
Yeah, they just don't have, like you said, all the thinking is offline and they're just trying to survive. Yeah, that makes so much sense.
Or animals who play dead. It's a complete freeze response.
Yeah.
Everything is about safety. This is a response. You are in danger, and this is a biological response to stay alive.
Yeah.
It's how your body thinks it's going to stay alive.
Yep.
Based on the trigger and based on how your body feels it is going to save itself.
Yeah. And I think your point is so good that sometimes it has to do that. Maybe in that situation, that is a way to survive. And in the car accident, it is a way to survive. If you're going to miss the bus, not as essential.
But it feels it in the moment.
Yeah.
Right? Her body felt that in the moment. It felt life or death in the moment.
Yeah. And that's interesting to me that our brain can't tell the difference.
Yeah, really.
Okay. And then what's the last one?
Fawn. So fawn is the people-pleasing survival response. So you appease the threat in the moment. So it's an inability to say no or telling your boss whatever he wants to hear just because you feel uncomfortable or not safe. It's always apologizing, not saying how you really feel, putting other people's needs before your own. There was a reel I saw on Instagram with male talk show hosts that had Britney Spears, Victoria Beckham on, and they were commenting on their physical bodies. And they were all like, thanks. It was complete fawning.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I saw that too. I was like, what the heck? That wasn't that long ago. Although I guess it was. But yeah, seriously. Well, I feel like people pleasing is something that we talk about a lot here on this podcast and that a lot of people suffer from. And it's good to know that that is also a way to hide, to stay safe.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. So is there a way to get out of each one of these states, or are there ways that you could use for any of them?
Yes. And I'm just going to talk high level. We could do a whole podcast on each of these specifically, but when we get stuck in these states, that's really what's called, nervous system dysregulation. This has become a very big topic. That's what you hear. The way to regulate your nervous system, I'm just going to talk very simply and broadly, but the 3 kind of simple things you can do. And one is, connect, move, and breathe. Those are kind of the three basic things.
Okay.
And connect is connect with a loved one, connect with nature. So if there's like specifically a loved one that makes you feel safe, like we all have that person that right with that car accident, if you pulled over, like who's that first person you're going to call, right? Like connect with a loved one or connect with a support group or, if you're, especially if you're in that freeze state, if you're isolating and it feels too hard to call somebody, just go to a support group or volunteer or just anytime you can like get out with other people. It's called co-regulation. Or if that even feels too hard, just like put your feet in the grass or in the sand, like connect with nature.
Connecting with nature. So just like something besides yourself.
Yes.
Okay. That's a good one.
Yep. Movement. So take a walk, just simple, like get outside, take a walk outside, dancing, shake it off. Like just movement is magic for your nervous system.
Okay.
And then the third is breathing. So in that car example, just like deep breaths, really deep breaths, like longer on the exhale, especially if you're like activated in fight or flight, like breath in and then longer on the exhale.
Okay. That's so great. It's like, it feels so simple to do that. I think for me, the big aha and everything that you've taught me about this is, okay, those three things are very simple and I can totally do those. But for me, what I needed to learn is identifying that I was in that response state. Like, oh, okay, I see what's happening. I'm in flight or I'm in fawn or whatever. And that's what's happening right now. And so I do want to get myself out so then I can do, breathing or whatever it is. But it's just so helpful to know that our brain is always trying to keep us safe, sometimes overly so. And that you just have to recognize that it's happening and then use one of those techniques to get yourself out of it.
Absolutely. And again, there's so much power in awareness. And I think the most important thing is to start paying attention. Just start trying to connect with yourself and knowing that whether you're in fight versus flight is really not as important as just connecting with yourself and understanding where's your energy, like fight or flight. Even if you lump them together, is just excess energy. Can I not stop moving my legs? Do I feel like I have this extra energy where I feel like I want to crawl out of my skin? Am I activated? That's fight or flight. Am I sort of like low energy? Do I feel like I want to isolate? Do I feel kind of detached? That's freeze. Just keep it simple and just try to just recognize. And then what do I feel like I need right now? Because I don't know if you remember this, Michelle, but you and I, when I was we called it obsessive mode.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I was like overworking. If I felt stressed about something, I would overwork. And then we figured out a process that helped me, which was to go for a walk and listen to Garth Brooks.
Yep.
And little did we know, we identified flight without realizing it. And we identified a process to regulate my nervous system way before we knew anything about the nervous system.
Yep. And I think there are probably several people right now shaking their heads yes on that overworking comment, because when we start to feel panicked, we overachiever types are like, I just need to do more. If I work harder, then I'll feel better. But then when that doesn't make you feel better, and especially if you're in an activated state like that, you're not even going to get anything done that's useful.
Right. Because what I didn't realize that when I was in flight, I barely had my logical thinking available to me.
Yeah.
So I was spinning. And so what actually helps is taking breaks, lots of breaks, and going for a walk and listening to my favorite artist.
Yeah, exactly. So the answer is Garth Brooks. That's essentially what you're here to tell us on this podcast.
Always. Every time.
I love Garth too.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. So thank you so much for just making that simple. I feel like it makes so much sense. It's easy to remember. It's easy to understand. Thank you so much. That was great. I have my two final questions to ask you that I ask every guest on the podcast. But before I do, I wanted to make sure, is there anything else that I haven't asked you that you want to share with us?
The only two things are just to remember it's all about safety. So like with the Josie example is cues of safety to yourself are really important, meaning like, so even though in that moment, so she was activated in that moment. So I think a good thing for her would be just like deep breaths. She could have taken in that moment, she could just to remind her to breathe, but to remind her that she wasn't in danger, right? Like to remember that the car was not swerving at her. She was not about to get to a car accident. And to remind her that she wasn't actually in danger. Like nothing was happening to her.
Okay. So we can remind ourselves of that too. Like, I'm not actually in danger.
Yes.
My body thought I was in danger, but I'm not actually in danger. Like for me, a good example would be if I thought I did something wrong, like if I made a mistake somewhere, that my body would activate like that. And I would have to say, we're not actually in danger. You just perceived that you did something wrong. And even if you did, it's okay.
Yeah.
Calm down, Michelle's brain.
Yeah. So you can like choose safety to yourself and warmth and kindness. And like this work really provides you with the why, like why this is happening, that this is happening at a biological level. And it really takes the shame and the judgment away because it's happening at a biological level.
Yeah, I love that. So it's not blamey, like, why does my body keep doing this? It's like, this is just how we're programmed, but you can get yourself out of it.
Yeah.
Okay, so here are my 2 questions for you. What is something that you do to make yourself feel more calm when you're overwhelmed?
Okay, so it's a little spin off overwhelmed. For me, it's when I'm overwhelmed slash activated slash like restless slash can't sleep, and it's called legs up against the wall,
Okay.
and it's like my body makes an L shape, and I think that you're going to put a link in the show notes. And my legs are up against the wall, my back is on the floor, and I'm making an L shape. And it's
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes, I'm picturing it.
Okay. And it's the most magic position. If you take one thing away from this podcast, take that away.
Okay.
I mean, literally.
So like your butt is against the wall in the corner, sort of between the wall and the floor. And then your legs are up. So your feet are the highest part. And then your head is like laying down at the bottom of the L.
Yes.
Got it.
I used to get restless leg. It's when I'm activated, like nervous system activated, when I can't sleep. In the middle of the night, if I can't sleep, I'll get out of my bed on the floor, do this position for like a few seconds. It doesn't even take that long. I get back in bed and I go to sleep. It is a magic position.
That is so amazing. Okay, that is wonderful. And it like checks all of the other things that you've said to us too. Like when you're doing that, you're breathing and you're like connecting with yourself. Okay, that's awesome. I love that. Yes, I will put a link to that.
Okay. Legs up against the wall.
Legs up against the wall. Got it. Okay, I'll put it in there. Okay, and then what is something you consistently do that allows you to do less or save time?
Okay, I use something called constraint, which basically is a rule or a decision you make ahead of time. So for example, and you can do this example I decided for the year, but you could also make this every day or on a day or a given week. So for example, I'm somebody who I love to doubt myself. I don't love to. My brain likes to doubt myself.
It's so fun to doubt myself.
Fun to doubt yourself. My brain loves to tell me I'll be a better coach if I get this certification, or I'll be a better coach if I learn this. And so I decided for 2024, no certifications, no training courses. It's my year of massive action. So I decided for 2024, take that off the table. So that is my constraint for 2024.
Okay. And how does that save you time? Like, how has it saved you time so far?
It saved me so much time because anytime I go or I see an ad for a training course, or I decide, oh, I want to do this training course, I say, nope, no training for 2024. It has saved me so much time of research and decisions. And it's just so much fun.
Yeah. And actually doing it, doing the course. Yeah. How much time that would take. Oh, I have this same thing with books. Like if I'm listening to a podcast and they mention a book or I hear another coach is reading a book. I'm like, ooh, I need to read that. And I used to just buy them. And then I ended up having all these books that I hadn't read. So now I just put them on a list. And then when I get to the point where I'm like, oh, I need a new book, I will get that. But otherwise, it's just like, it's hard to stop learning.
Yes.
There's so much fun stuff to learn. So yeah, it's hard. Yeah, you've got to have constraint for it. Okay, that's awesome. All right. Thank you so much. So we will link in the show notes exactly what you showed us about the legs up against the wall. We'll put your website out there. So if we want to find out more about the nervous system, do you have any other resources that we could check out?
Yes, I gave a free class on the nervous system. It's a little specific to type 1 diabetes, but just in my example. So I have a free class on my website around the nervous system.
Okay, wonderful. So we will link that as well. Thank you so much, Lauren. It's always so much fun to have you on.
Thanks so much.
Thank you for listening to the Overwhelmed Working Woman podcast. If you want to learn more about my work, head over to my website at michellegauthier.com. See you next week.